Okay, we've got worksheet 4B from the Math 4 course, and this is one that's been, well, it's been a meme that's been around for years. Sine B divided by tan B equals cos B. Cosine B, cos B. Anyway, there's humor in there somewhere. All right, here we go. We are rewriting these, and our first step is to rewrite everybody in terms of sine and cosine. I got sine over 1. Secant is 1 over cosine. If tangent is sine over cosine, the cotangent is that upside down. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work the left side until we get it to where it equals 1. Okay, that's how we're going to verify these identities. All right, so when we look at this, we wind up with, well, if we just do it this way, sine and the sine cancel, cosine and the cosine cancel, and all I'm left with is 1. That check means that, yes, we verified that all of that equals 1. All right, so we're going to take the right side this time and see if we can make it equal cosecant. All right, so cotangent is going to be cosine over sine, and secant is going to be 1 over cosine, and those cosines are going to cancel and leave me with 1 over sine, which is cosecant of theta. And so that checks out. All right, we're going to do sine over cosecant and see if it turns into sine squared. Now, we're going to take sine over cosecant, and we're going to do this with it. We're going to separate them into the fraction below and the one on top, which actually 1 over cosecant is sine over 1 times sine over 1, which is sine squared of theta. Okay. All right, next one, we're going to put all these together and see if they turn out to be 1 when we're done. So we're going to say cosine over 1. Cosecant is going to be 1 over sine. And then tangent is going to be sine over cosine. And once again, we're going to have that and that cancel, that and that cancel, which leaves us with 1. Now they start getting a little uglier. Sine times tangent plus cosine. That is going to be sine over 1 times sine over cosine. I think we've seen something like this in the notes, where in order to be able to add these two together, you had to get a cosine common denominator going, which turned this into sine squared over cosine plus cosine squared over cosine. And by the time you put them together on the same fraction, because they both have the same denominator, you can rewrite this as 1 because sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. And 1 over cosine is secant. Okay. All right, that cotangent is supposed to be over here. And so we're going to take these and try and turn it into a secant. Now, I'm going to rewrite this as 1 over cotangent times cosecant, which 1 over a cotangent is the same as tangent times cosecant. And now we're going to rewrite them as sine over cosine times 1 over sine. Now that's going to give me the ability to cancel some things out, which makes this 1 over cosine, which I then flip around and make it a secant. Okay, number 7, we're going to try tan times cosecant. Run that up here. Felt like I've seen that before. Okay, maybe it was in the notes perhaps. Anyway, tan times cosecant is going to be sine over cosine times 1 over sine. And our sines are going to cancel, which is just going to leave us 1 over cosine, which is the secant of theta. Okay, and we got how many? 3 more to go. Okay. All right. Now, what I may end up doing here is working both sides and see if they can, both boil down to the same thing. So if I say tan plus cotangent, that's like saying sine over cosine plus cosine over sine. Now, if I do that, I'm going to need a common denominator, which means I'm going to need one of each. I'm going to need a sine on the left side, and I'm going to need a cosine on the right side, which means that I'm going to wind up with sine squared plus cosine squared over sine times cosine. Or I could say 1 over sine cosine. Wait a minute now, 1 over sine, if I split those up, 1 over sine is cosecant theta, and 1 over cosine is secant theta. So that really is the same thing. Okay, tan squared plus 1 equals secant squared. Well, let's take the tan squared plus 1. And if we're going to try and put those together, we're going to have to do this. Which means I'm going to have to back up and do this. So that I can combine them with a common denominator, tan squared on the bottom. So I'm actually going to have tan to the 4th plus tan squared over tan squared. And I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. Perhaps I need to look at this from this direction. Remember, that's one of our identities. What would happen if I took everybody and divided them by cosine squared. What's going to happen there? Well, sine squared over cosine squared is really going to become tan squared. And cosine squared over cosine squared is going to become 1. Oh, look where this is going. And 1 over cosine is actually secant, so 1 over cosine squared is going to be secant squared. So this is actually this part was not needed. We pursued it and we realized that we weren't getting anywhere helpful. So I backed up and I said, wait a minute, what's the one thing I know that involves squares? And that's sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. And I suddenly found myself asking, what if I divided everybody by cosine squared? I'm going to wind up with all of the players I've got over here. Okay. All right. So now we're going to take all of the stuff on the left and see if we can boil it down to cosecant. So that's going to be cosine over 1. Cotangent is sine over cosine upside down, so cosine over sine plus sine over 1. Now, this is going to feel familiar, but we did it with cosines, and now we're having to do it with sines, so that I can have a sine on the bottom, a common denominator, so that I can combine these two. Cosine squared over sine plus sine squared over sine is going to give me, and I'll put it in the right order, sine squared plus cosine squared over sine, which sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. I can substitute that, and 1 over sine is cosecant of theta. I believe that was, yeah, that was all of them.